It's 2023, and by now you're probably thinking, okay, I am sick and tired of the latest fad diet. I'm ready to ditch these stupid diet rules and find a way of eating healthy that's right for me. Well, if that sounds like you, then you are definitely in the right place. Today we're going to talk about the 5 silly diet rules that you can leave in 2022, or really, this probably applies whatever year you're watching it, because there's always going to be some silly fad diets touting these rules, no matter if we're in 2022, 2023, or 2060. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Katie. I'm a registered dietitian and certified personal trainer. And here on the channel, we bust diet myths, teach you how to have a healthy relationship with food, and how to eat with mindfulness and intention. So if that interests you, definitely consider subscribing. And if you want to learn more about how to connect with me and the Dark Blue Nutrition community, then check out the links below, including my Mindful Eating Masterclass, which is a free 45-minute class just for you to teach you the basics of mindful eating so you can fuel your body with intention without the diets. Kind of like what we're talking about today. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the 5 silly diet rules that you can leave in 2022. Rule number 1 that I think you can totally ditch is don't drink your calories. Now, I'm not gonna deny the obvious elephant in the room that of course drinks like soda that really don't have a whole lot of nutritional content or value to them will add up, and a drink like that with added sugar but really nothing else to it can be a negative factor in your diet. So no, I am not delusional, I promise. I understand that to be true. But truthfully, I think this rule has really gotten out of hand over the years. There are tons of examples of, quote, liquid calories that can actually add nutrition to your diet, not take away from it. Think of an athlete who's about to go into a big football game who needs hydration, carbohydrates, and electrolytes to perform their best. And think of a growing child or a woman who is maybe trying to prevent osteoporosis having a glass of milk. This has vitamin D and calcium, among other nutrients that are really important for strengthening the bones. These are just 2 examples of how food in liquid form, specifically as we are speaking of right now, can be a functional food, or I guess a functional beverage or drink or whatever you want to think of it. The next big example is smoothies. Whoever wants to fight me on if a smoothie is not nutritious or not worth your calories, just come in the comments below, because I think that that's one of the best examples of how liquid calories can be a really positive thing. I know I, for one, love to have smoothies after a really big workout where I'm trying to repair my muscles, get in carbs, fats, and proteins, almost like a mini meal. So again, fight me if you want to say that that's a bad thing. And my final example, just to really cement in this point, is think of a diabetic who is in low blood sugar mode. And is that a mode, Katie? Low blood sugar mode? Think of a diabetic who is low in blood sugar and they need something that is simple carbohydrates to bring their blood sugars up, or else they could go into a diabetic coma. So in these circumstances, usually we think orange juice or some sort of fruit juice, because it's really quick sugar to elevate the sugars and protect them again from going into a coma or even death. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, and such a shame if we are teaching diabetics and other types of people that just orange juice and fruit juice is flat out bad for you no matter what. That could be the difference between someone getting help and someone doing pretty bad damage to their body. And here's the thing too, sure, having too much fruit juice is probably not the greatest thing in terms of lots of carbs, lots of sugar, a high insulin response, and then a crash and burn later in the afternoon because all you had was this orange juice. But that's assuming that all you're having is orange juice or fruit juice. If you pair those things together with something like a really big balanced breakfast of sausage, eggs, toast, and orange juice, that's gonna affect your blood sugar so much differently than orange juice alone. So again, I had orange juice this morning, so I'm on an orange juice kick right now. But I think when we think of liquid calories in a more functional nutrition sense, how can I use this liquid calories properly, or please don't use the word liquid calories ever again, but how can we use this to nourish our bodies better? Not, how can I drink more soda? Of course, that's not a good thing, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. Rule number 2 that we can leave in 2022 is that carbs are bad for you. Now, I'm sorry to roll my eyes so much in this video, but the sass is gonna come out. And the reason that I really hate this rule or generalization, besides the fact that I hear it everywhere and it's almost like backed by no science at all, is because it seems to generalize all carbs as if all carbs are the same. There are so many types of carbs out there that this rule doesn't even really make sense. In reality, there are carbs that are more or less processed, carbs that have more or less fiber, and carbs that are more and less nutrient dense. They're not just all created the same. Sure, from a macronutrient standpoint, when we ingest carbohydrates or eat carbohydrates, that's a weird way to say that, Katie. When we eat carbohydrates from that macronutrient sense, our body is processing it the same. So carbs are going to be the most easily processed and absorbed nutrients out of all 3 macros, and proteins and fats are going to go through a different pathway in the body to get broken down into their useful things. Proteins, amino acids, and fats are broken down into glycerol and fatty acid components. So that's for a whole different video if you want to go into more depth on that. But to pretend like we can have a life without carbs is just kind of silly to me, especially those who call out carbs as the devil. And then when you really break it down, it's like, okay, what are you actually eating then? That's what I want to know. Carbs are not only in things like bread and cereal and other processed things, rice, stuff like that. They're also in fruits. They're also in vegetables, and not just in potatoes and sweet potatoes and corn and stuff like that. They're also in things like green beans, peppers, carrots, tomatoes. They're in so many things that avoiding carbs or having the argument that we should just live off of fat and protein is just kind of silly. And the usual argument for carbs being bad is that they create an insulin response, which too much insulin response leads to things like diabetes and disease. And I think this is just a misinterpretation of the insulin response in general. Having an insulin response when you eat carbohydrates is a normal part of being a human being. Like, you don't have to have any sort of disease or diabetes to have an insulin response. Now, when our insulin response is not working properly, that is when we can have issues. But for the average human being that doesn't have any underlying diseases or issues with insulin response, it's just understand that when you hear all about, something, I saw something on TikTok the other day that was like someone testing their blood sugar after raspberries, and it gave them this little spike, and then they tested it after a banana, and then it had an even bigger spike. It's like, yes, there is a different response because raspberries are higher in fiber than a banana and lower in glycemic index. But that doesn't make a banana bad for you. It just means that it's, creating a little bit different of a glycemic response in compared to raspberries, still within the normal healthy range. When you cut out carbs entirely, you rule out a whole food group, which can cause nutrient deficiencies. It can also cause a lot of constipation because a lot of the fiber in our diet, in fact, all of the fiber in our diet, comes from the carbohydrate group. And finally, it can just cause a poor relationship with food because there's really no reason to cut out specific food groups unless you're allergic, or maybe you have some religious reason why you're not having that food. If you're worried about the insulin response of carbs, always pair carbs with protein and fat, and you'll be good to go. Rule number I always have a hard time holding up the 3. Rule number 3 that you can leave in 2022 is having no processed foods. I think that people misinterpret what the actual term of processed foods really means. Let's look at the definition together. According to the Department of Agriculture, processed foods are any agriculture commodities that have been washed, cleaned, milled, cut, chopped, heated, pasteurized, blanched, cooked, canned, frozen, dried, dehydrated, mixed, or packaged. Essentially anything done to them that alters their natural state. And I'll also leave a little infographic or picture on the screen here to give you a little example of what processed foods can look like. Because I think we have this misconception that processed foods are all just these bad, high sugar, low fiber, horrible foods. But that's definitely not always the case. In fact, there are so many good for you foods, including things like frozen veggies, frozen fruits, maybe a high protein frozen dinner, even frozen chicken is considered to be processed. The other thing with this rule that is less than savory, I would say, to my ears, is that the whole reason that humans are not, that we have as big of a population as we do now, and that we're thriving as much as we are in 2023 or whatever year it might be for you, the reason is because we learned how to better package foods so that it wouldn't go bad. And yes, of course, for some things, maybe we have gone a little too far in that direction of everything being kind of processed and having sugar or salt added to it. But again, I think we just need to not be too hasty with our judgment of packaged foods as being a totally bad thing, because not all packaged foods are created the same. And, I guess if we think about it, we have quite a bit of privilege in that regard, that we don't have to worry about certain foods going bad right away. Usually, I think I have a hair on my lip. Hopefully that hasn't been there the whole time. I'll give an example. So I love fresh fruit, but right now we are on a tighter budget and I am trying to kind of stretch the dollar. So we're not having to go to the grocery store as often. We're doing a big grocery trip. And usually we do one supplemental one in the middle of the month so that, we can get some fresh stuff and refill on the fresh stuff. God dang it, this lip gloss is attracting all the hair, all the cat hair. So of course I will stock up at the beginning of the month of fresh apples, bananas, berries. What else did I get this month? Green beans and stuff like that. But I'll also get those little peaches in a cup. I'll also get the applesauce pouches and frozen veggies. So mid-month I still have access to healthy options, but they're not all going bad. Because if I got everything fresh, imagine how often I'd have to go to the store and how much money I'd have to spend replenishing the stuff that I had most likely lost half of during the month. All of that to say, processed foods can be a part of a healthy diet as long as we blend them with fresh foods too. I'm not saying have all processed foods, and I'm not saying have all fresh. Have a blend, and that's, I think, the most realistic thing to do for your health and for your wallet. If you're enjoying this video so far, then I think you'll really want to check out my free masterclass on mindful eating. This is going to help you fuel your body better without all the guilt, shame, and diet rules like some of the things we're talking about in today's video. To learn more, check out the description below where I link straight to the free masterclass, and I can't wait to see you there. All right, let's get back into what diet rules you can ditch in 2022. Rule number 4, or kind of philosophy number 4, that you can leave in 2022 is that eating any type of sugar leads to more sugar cravings. Now, here's the deal for this one, because there are a few caveats. If you're always eating sweets, packaged foods, and fast food, are you likely to crave that food more often? And is that food higher in sugar, sodium, calories, etc.? Yes. Again, without a doubt, we have a lot of nuance in this channel, so you'll never find me trying to be one-sided about something. I can see it from both angles. There are definitely situations where your diet can be setting you up for eating more food, and that food may be high calorie but low in satiety. So that can cause problems if you're trying to maintain your healthy weight. And there are certain types of foods in this day and age that are what we call highly palatable. And so they are designed to be eaten in higher quantities. Think chips or maybe French fries, stuff like that. Not saying you can't have them ever, but those are some examples of foods that if you had them all the time, you would probably crave more foods like them. But do I think that having sugary foods in any way, shape, or form is going to cause more cravings? No. I highly believe in a 80-20 philosophy of trying to fuel a majority of the time with nutrient-dense foods, but also leaving room for being human and having some of the joys in life, some of the treat foods in life that may not be extremely nutrient dense. Eating sweet foods is a natural, healthy part of our human physiology. And personally, as a dietitian, I think it's really extremely important to learn how to moderate yourself around foods that you may feel are highly palatable and really desirable, and maybe that you fear a little bit on going overboard on. And yes, that is me incorporating psychology into healthy eating, because I think that matters a ton, and people kind of neglect that part. If we never habituate ourselves to foods like sugar or foods with sugar in them, or think of any really type of food that you fear eating because you think you might binge eat on it or go overboard on. The birthday cake, the pizza, tacos, candy, stuff like that. If we never ever learn to self-regulate with those foods, it's gonna be a struggle for us our entire lives. So if you find yourself thinking, oh yeah, I do wanna do the 80-20 rule, Katie, but I struggle with keeping it to that 20%, or I struggle with not going overboard once I have the food that I actually crave, then I highly recommend working one-on-one with a dietitian, because this is gonna help you have that accountability and structure and personal guidance for your unique situation. We do talk a lot about mindful eating in my Mindful Muscles Academy program as well. I'm currently adding new lessons to incorporate more in-depth lessons on mindfulness in there too. So that is also available to you. But I do think it's important to note that sometimes one-on-one support for this is the most important thing, at least in the beginning. All right, guys, are you ready? Drum roll, please. Rule number 5 that you can leave in 2022 is that eating later at night will make you gain weight. This rule suggests that eating later in the day is worse than eating earlier on and midday because you are less active at night and you're closer to your normal sleep routine. But what we know from the scientific literature, at least so far, is that it really doesn't matter what time of day you eat as long as your overall calories are in check. But I have to add some nuance to that too. From my own experience and my experience working with clients, I do think that nutrition timing matters. But the rule here that I think we're really trying to break is that eating at night in general is not a bad thing. Not that you should eat all your calories at night and none throughout the day, because I really do strongly believe from my own experience and my experience working with clients that nutrition timing is extremely important. But it can be a little bit different from person to person, so I think you kind of have to learn your own rhythm and learn your own body's natural preferences, because there really are people that do better with having breakfast and stopping eating at a certain time, like say 8 or 9 o'clock, and others that do better with starting later in the day and eating, until the evening, at least stopping 2 hours before bedtime. And to dive into this even further, I think that if you are skipping meals during the day, that can lead to what seems like binge eating at night, which can make you identify the problem as, oh, I'm binge eating at night, when really the true underlying problem is not eating regularly throughout the day so that you can avoid things like binge eating at night. So sometimes I find that, people can blame binge eating at night on simply eating at night is bad, but really it's a lack of structure throughout the day and a normal eating pattern throughout the day, and even eating enough throughout the day that causes the problems at night, not the fact that it's nighttime itself. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'm actually thinking of doing a video on this topic, diving a little deeper, because I think it's a pretty detailed topic that we could dive into. So let me know in the comment section below if you'd like to see that video. If you have your own diet rule that you'd like to share with the community down below that we can leave in 2022, let us know in the comment section below. And hey, if you have any topics that you want me to cover, whether it relates to something today or something that you just thought of magically in your mind, let me know as well. I'll be honest, I've kind of been in a little bit of a creation rut lately, so your ideas are always so helpful, and I appreciate them from the bottom of my heart. So this channel is all about you, and I want to be able to answer your nutrition questions and be a I want to be a reliable source of nutrition information on the wild west of the internet. So knowing what you have questions on is always really appreciated and helpful for the channel. If you want to keep hanging out with me on YouTube, then check out this video right here, click or tap the screen to head on over, and I'll see you there. Bye guys.